Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 10 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, February the 23rd. I'm glad to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us. 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. Chat room is open. I did pop a couple of links in there, and the link to the topic that I want to finish, or sort of at least continue on with, which is dysfunctional families, from a really interesting website. And they have some really good stuff to talk about regarding dysfunctional families. And the reason I want to kind of tie this into child abuse is because dysfunctional families, there may not be abuse in a dysfunctional family, but then there may be. And if sometimes it's sort of a good setup and a good breeding ground for abuse. And I think so many people have grown up in dysfunctional families and also have been abused within these dysfunctional families, and that's myself. So that's why I want to cover this topic. And this particular website has some very good information on it and give us an idea of what is a healthy family as well. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, the difference between a healthy family and a dysfunctional family. And so this website is really quite good. So thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate you tuning into my shows. And I know I do a lot of shows, and I thank everybody who's taking the time to do this, because I know how long it takes me to do these shows, so I know how long it takes to listen to them. And I know that the dedication to the people that are following my shows, and it's a lot of work. And so I thank you for tuning in. And I was never really sure what to do, and I wanted to get as much information in as I could while I was doing the shows. And it's now over a year, so in November 2009 I started doing this, and all the way to November 2010, and now we're going into March of 2011. So I had no idea how long I'd be doing these. And so thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And I'm not a counselor or therapist. You have to listen at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is a sensitive subject. You need to know, what's good for you to listen to. So I say this on every show. So you have to listen at your own discretion. It is your discretion, clearly your choice. And so abuse topics, man, they can trigger people who are survivors, who are just on their healing journey, just starting out. And a lot of people just find it very uncomfortable. So you have to ultimately know what's good for you to listen to, and make sure that, if you think the topic might bother you, to please turn the show off. Young people under the age of 18, I ask that you have permission to listen to my shows, and that's because I believe in protecting children at all times. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. We're standing up, fighting to save children's lives, to stop child abuse, and you need to learn how to keep yourself safe online, especially when there's a chat room present. And my show has a lot of adult content on it, and so therefore I don't know how young the children are who are listening to the show, because the players can be placed around just anywhere. And so it's, I'm asking you to get permission to listen to my show if you're under the age of 18, because I want you to get someone to listen to it with you to make sure it's age appropriate for you, right? Thanks very much. And keep yourself safe. You need to learn how to do that. Just type into your browser, Internet Safety for Children, Online Safety for Children, and it'll bring up websites that can give you some really good information on how to keep yourself safe when you're online. It's very important. And so we'll get right into this topic, dysfunctional families. And we left off talking about the issues of disorder, that dysfunctional families and growing up in a dysfunctional family, they said, is quite similar to PTSD experienced by survivors of disasters of war, such as Vietnam veterans, or other disasters like natural disasters and things like that can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. So they said these happen to people who with events outside of the range of what is considered normal human experience. And they said war veterans and adults growing up in dysfunctional families may, without warning, re-experience feelings, thoughts, and behaviors that were present during the original traumatic event. And these re-emerging painful feelings are newly triggered by environmental stimuli. So Dr. Cermak notes that for children from chemically dependent families, the trigger can be almost anything, like the sound of ice clinking in a glass, an expression of anger or criticism, arguing, the sensation of losing control. And this is from www.mudrashram.com, and this is where we left off on last Friday night. Monday night we had Ray Luskin on talking about shame and guilt as a result of child abuse, and which was a great show. Ray Luskin, she's just such an awesome lady, and she's been on my show a few times now, and I hope that she will come back and do some more shows with us. And but this particular article, we were talking about this on Friday the 18th. So if you want to go back and pick up that show, that's where we were talking about the beginning part of this article. And that's www.mudrashram.com, mudrashram.com. And the name of the article, I'll get that for you. It's actually called Mudrashram Institute of Spiritual Studies, and it says when you grow up in a dysfunctional family. That's the name of the actual article, and it was posted by George A. Boyd in 1992. It's an older article, but it doesn't matter because on this website, if you go to this website, Mudrashram Institute of Spiritual Studies, they have roles within dysfunctional families, types of dysfunctional families, healthy families, so that people can see the difference between a healthy family and an unhealthy family. A question of boundaries, setting your personal boundaries, all kinds of great information on here. And this is a really good website, and this is some good info. I really think this info is very good. They were talking about all the roles that people play because you're forced into playing these roles as a child within the home. They're roles that people, and mainly parents and caregivers, set up for you, as well as siblings and other people in your life who set up these roles for you to play, and they expect you to play them out. So if it's abusive and dysfunctional, or even if it's just dysfunctional, they still expect you to play them out. And it's, I talk a lot about this on my morning show, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, the issues of this, codependency and these role-playing things, this role that my parents had set up for me to play for the rest of my life. And I actually just finally tore it up, and I said, no, I'm not playing that role anymore. At the age of 41, I decided to get myself a new role, which was healthy, and, to help myself, right, to heal. And that if you don't do that, and you grow up in these abusive environments, where you're just bombarded by dysfunction, improper ways of thinking about things, and you can't even help it because you just grow up in this mess, and that's your belief system. You know what I mean? You're just brought up in it. That's what it's hard to actually even know that you might need to change some of these things in your life. And at the age of 41, I realized that I had so many issues I still had to deal with, and really had never really thought that I could heal. So at the age of 41 is when I realized that, hey, I could do this. I could allow myself to heal. I could actually have a good life. I don't have to allow the abuse that I suffered to destroy me. And I think that's the issue. That's where I was 4 years ago, making that decision, to have a good life and to allow myself to heal. And so this is what this stuff can do to people. It's absolutely horrific. So this is where we kind of left off, was talking about this PTSD stuff. And they talk about it as being, similar to what a war veteran would feel, or someone who's been through a war or some sort of really traumatic event. That's what this stuff actually can do to people growing up in these dysfunctional environments, or being part of this dysfunctional family system. It's pretty harsh. So we'll just pick up right where we left off there. They said that another symptom of stress disorder is psychic numbing, which Dr. Serbeck describes as suspended feelings in favor of taking steps to ensure personal safety. So suspending feelings in favor of taking steps to ensure personal safety, or splitting between oneself and experience. So disconnecting from feelings in order to survive. And that's like psychic numbing. And I don't know a whole lot about that stuff, you know what I mean? As far as for sure, especially like DID, dissociative disorder and stuff like that. I'm not really up on that stuff. I haven't done a whole lot of looking at it or reading up on it. I have heard a little bit about it, and because I kind of thought, well, am I dissociative? And I think if you can ask yourself that question, you might not be. Dissociative is like when there's more than one personality usually, and it's not really like personality disorder. It's there's another part of a person who takes over, because they do that to protect themselves. So if it's especially to do with child sexual abuse, the child who's being sexually abused will quite often, just because of the sheer trauma and the torture and the trauma and the fear and the everything else of being sexually abused by someone, their brain, they can't handle it, so the brain actually shuts down, and then another really personality within themselves takes over. I guess this is sort of what I get that this is all about, that DID and becoming another person within yourself in order to deal with whatever's happening to you. And I don't think that happened to me, but I actually know people who have this, and that's hard. I mean, that's harsh. I feel bad for those people, because it has to be that extreme and that severe to cause that. An event would have to be just that horrible and horrifying that a child's mind would split. And so splitting between oneself and experience. That's horrible, and that's why we need to stop this. That's why this is so important that we stop this mess. And people say, "Oh, it can't stop child abuse. Never be able to stop child abuse." We have to try. I think that by saying yes we can, by saying that we can stop child abuse, because really child abuse is a choice. We could really stop child abuse tonight if everybody would stop abusing children. That's the issue. But we know that so many won't. But the thing is that if everybody would, we could stop it, which means that it is actually doable, right? I mean, I'm a smart person, and I understand how things work, and so I know that if it's a choice, and if you could convince every single person out there tonight, right now actually, in 5 minutes, to never ever abuse a child again, we could completely stop child abuse. I wish we could do that right now, because I really would like to be moving on to do something else. And these poor kids out here, they don't deserve this. I mean, my God. This is absolutely ridiculous, the stuff that's happening to kids out here, and it always has been ridiculous, and it always will be, and that's why we need to stop it. They said survivors of trauma also experience hypervigilance and an inability to feel comfortable unless they are continually monitoring their environment. So Cermak relates that they remain on edge, always expecting the worst, unable to trust or feel safe again. And that's a huge issue for a lot of people who have survived, survivors of abuse and domestic violence and whatnot, and anybody who's been in a traumatic experience. It's very hard on people. Finally, survivors of trauma, veterans of a war, or children from chemically dependent families feel survivor guilt. Whenever they experience the fullness that life has to offer, they immediately feel as if they are betraying those who never had the chance. It seems somehow wrong to go away and be healthy when those that are left behind are still suffering. And that's where, I don't have that issue, because I know kids are being abused right now. I was abused as a child. I know the kids are being abused right now, and they always will be until we can stop this mess. But I don't think that I should not, I don't take on the role of, well, I can't have a good life now because there's too many kids suffering. I find a lot of joy in this life. And I actually realized on one of my shows in the morning I was talking about joy, and the fact that I really couldn't experience joy. I didn't know really how to. But then I thought about it just recently, because I was talking to some good friends, some dear friends of mine, Donna Shearer and Sandra Potter, and just thinking, and they're not the only ones, Gypsy Witch, and there's a whole bunch of people in my life, Princess Kaylin, really that's not her name, but they have other names, but these people are from the UK and Australia, and I'm not going to say their names on air, but people in my life who, they bring me so much joy, you know what I mean, that, for me to be able to sit here and say, oh, nothing brings me joy, that would be a lie. So I think the other day when I was, actually it was probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago that I was talking about that, I kind of was talking about an inner joy that I can bring for myself. But lots of other people bring me a lot of joy. And so I can experience good things, and I can, even though I know kids are being abused right now, you know what I mean? I don't take on that role of, well, I can't have a good time and I can't enjoy my life because kids are being abused. Because that's a very unhealthy thing to do. We still need to stop child abuse, and I know kids are being abused, and it does break my heart. Every day, every moment of the day, it breaks my heart, because I know, because I was there, I was being abused, and I know what it's like to be abused. So I put myself in these kids' shoes out here every day, right? But I still have to live my life, and I made a choice 4 years ago to really live it to the fullest. And, that's a huge issue for survivors, right? Because many times they feel that they can't do that. Either they're not allowed or they can't allow themselves to, for whatever reason. And it's very sad. It's very, very sad. Because not only were we abused as children then, or suffering as children, and then have to go on and suffer as adults forever just because we were abused. And that's what the road I was heading on. I was actually thinking that I had to be damaged and I had to be miserable for as long as I was going to be on the earth, because that was my role I was playing, right? Which was really the victim role, right? But I took on a survivor attitude 4 years ago and said, man, I'm gonna do this, and have to for myself, and but nobody else is going to do it for me. I'm going to have to do it myself. So this is why this is such a huge issue, that we stop abuse, because this is what it does to people. And there's too many people out there that like to minimize it. That's why I'm talking on here every night and every day, and I plan to, hopefully go worldwide with this thing. I mean, I don't want to just go nationwide, Canada-wide, U.S.-wide. I'm a American-born citizen who lives in Canada. I'm a dual citizen, and I hope to go worldwide, really, eventually down the road. And really, I want to continue speaking out against this, because It's just something I feel like I need to do. You know what I mean? I got a voice, I could use it, and I don't mind talking about this stuff. And there's too many people who like to minimize it, make it look like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. These kids aren't really suffering. There's too many people out there in society and in families, within families, that think it's perfectly okay to rape their children, to beat on their children, to, caregivers and whatnot, and mainly parents, and kill their children, and torture them in the most horrific ways. And if they're not doing that, they're verbally abusing them to the point where the kid just wants to kill themselves. I was there, believe you me. And, the emotional, psychological damage done because of the abuse, even if there's no physical abuse, can kill a child. It's absolutely horrific. And I don't mind being a voice for these kids out here. But it doesn't mean that I can't enjoy ice cream and a chat with a friend on the phone. Definitely not. I love those moments in my life where people bring this sunshine and this laughter and this good stuff into my life. And it really shows me that, I've always been able to laugh and have fun. I've had some great friends in my lifetime. That's probably been one of the best things that's ever happened to me, is that I have, even though I was abused as a child and lived in this horrific mess for so many years, and dysfunction, I had so many good friends, and I still do. So this is a huge gift in my life. People that really care about me, and I have friends all over the world. It's amazing. And I've always had friends who were looking out for me, and even old friends that were looking out for me when I was a teenager being abused. Those friends are still my friends. They care about me. I'm sure they do. Some of them I don't talk to, and some of my friends are long gone and dead. But I've had some great experiences in my life. I've traveled. I've done a lot of cool stuff. So I'm just throwing this in here because I want people to know that, just because we've been abused and mistreated all of our lives doesn't mean that we can't learn to embrace the good stuff too. I don't talk a whole lot about it on my shows, especially in the more One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, because that's not the type of show that I'm presenting. What I'm trying to do is really get to the root of my healing journey, and that's to deal with all the hard stuff. That's dealing with all the stuff that brings a lot of pain into that's always been there, but it allows me to experience that pain and to do something with it, because that pain is what is there whether I talk about it or not. And so, I'm still suffering from the abuse that I suffered as a child. And so I don't talk a whole lot about the great stuff that I've done in my lifetime, and it's mainly because I'm not addressing that. I'm addressing the severe abuse that I was put through as a child and what it did to me, and how I'm learning to manage my life now as a survivor. So that's why. But I have had some great experiences and done a lot of traveling and done a lot of really cool stuff, and met some awesome people, had some great friends, and the good things have happened to me too. So I don't dismiss that stuff away just because I was abused as a child. Like I have a lot of physical problems because of the abuse I suffered, as well as emotional problems and stuff. And I have some physical injuries from car wrecks as well, and so I'm in a lot of physical pain. Actually, I'm in physical pain all the time, and but I don't just dismiss away the good stuff just because I'm dealing with this leftover stuff from the abuse that I suffered and from these car wrecks and things like this. I still try to find some joy and try to enjoy things. You know what I mean? So I guess I can find joy. I don't know how to kind of get it myself, is what I was really getting at the other day when I was mentioning that. Not sure where it comes from inside of me, but a lot of people have brought me a lot of joy. And so maybe at some point I'll sit down and I'll do some work on finding that stuff from the inside of me. You know what I mean? I don't know exactly how to even look for it, but I'm sure it's got to be there somewhere. I just haven't acknowledged it. But I know outside sources have brought me a lot of joy, and that's my friends, and that's people in my life who I care about and who are there for me. So we don't have to let this stuff destroy us, and that's the huge issue. And there's people who grew up in perfectly fine homes and would, still suffer with PTSD and stuff like that, and they still have such a hard time. And I would say just never give up. Never ever give up. That's my big message in the morning when I'm talking on One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, because it's something that sits so heavy with me that people give up. I was ready to give up, say, 4 years ago. I was ready to throw it in again. It had been a reoccurring theme in my life, and I finally decided, no more of that. I'm going to live. I'm going to have a good life, and I'm going to learn how to do this, and I don't care how long it takes me to learn how to do it, but I'm going to do it. And it makes no difference to me if it takes 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or as long as I've got, I'm going to learn how to do it. And I got nothing better to do. And so that's the thing. It's been an awesome experience. But it's been painful, too, because, you have to face the bad stuff with the good stuff, right? And sometimes it's hard to face that bad stuff. And I find it's okay for me to do that on my own. I don't have a problem with that. But I know that a lot of people can't do that on their own. And so you need to, if you're a survivor and you're listening tonight, make sure that you do get some help with that. You know what I mean? If it's group support or online group support, I found that very good because I didn't really trust the whole idea of counselors and therapists. Group support to me, there's safety in numbers sort of thing. And I just felt that I could go online when I had time. I'm, pretty busy, and it was really helpful, very helpful to talk to people who have been through the same sort of things that I've been through, who could be there as a shoulder, as a support system. And they would talk about things that they did that used to help them out when they were having flashbacks, or things that would help them out during, through the day when they were having a hard day, things like this. I found it very helpful. And so that's why I just like to be an encouraging voice out here for people to never, ever give up, And I've seen too many people give up, and I lost two of my brothers who gave up, and it's sad. It's so sad to see that, right? And this is what can happen with dysfunctional families, So here's what they talk about: healthy families, unhealthy families, right? This is the next section of this website, which is www.mudrashram.com. And they say codependency is transmitted through family learning, and family members come to believe that these distorted patterns of relating are normal. As the family is the primary arena of socialization, children growing up in these families are ill-equipped to deal with the demands of the larger world outside the family home. They are often saddled with inadequate coping skills, distorted perceptions of what is appropriate behavior, and unrealistic expectations of the behavior of other people. And I know this firsthand growing up in this distorted, dysfunctional home. Everything was perverted in that home. Our ways of thinking, everything that was happening, everything that was going on was all perverted, all distorted, and all very dysfunctional because my parents were both mentally ill, right? My dad was borderline schizophrenic as well as borderline personality problems. My mom was manic depressive, which is really nowadays, I guess they kind of call it bipolar. And they were both abused as children, and they were both mentally ill. And so they set up this world that was just, not healthy. And the abuse that was going on was definitely not healthy. And it had a huge effect on our family, and it destroyed our family. And it destroyed all of us. There's a few of my siblings left. There's only two of my siblings left, actually. And are they healthy? Not really. But their lives are pretty good. They do a pretty good job of looking after themselves and their families. And so that's good. But do they have issues? Absolutely they do, because of the abuse. Right. So it says to heal these dysfunctional patterns of relating, the codependent adult must get into touch with the inner child, the real self within. This part of us is alive, energetic, creative, and capable of seeing things as they really are. The inner child can love others unconditionally and can tell the truth. So it's quite interesting what they say there. I did some work on the inner child stuff a while back on my shows in the morning, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. And it was quite helpful because I'm actually working on that right now, actually, as we speak. I'm sort of this last probably 6 months, especially been focusing on getting in touch with my inner child, and because I didn't know a whole lot about it before. I knew she was there. I just didn't know a whole lot about it. So I've done a whole lot of, sort of reading and looking into it, and it is helpful. You know what I mean? It's anything we do to try to help ourselves, can be helpful. You never know when you're going to run across some information that just makes sense, and it just helps you kind of deal with stuff. They said that, in contrast, the codependent false self feels uncomfortable, strained, and inauthentic in relating to other people. It acts to cover up, deny, withhold genuine feelings, and inhibits spontaneous, natural, or playful behavior. It may develop a negative attitude towards self or others that is envious, critical, blaming, shaming, perfectionistic. It tends to be other-oriented, focused on what it believes others think it should be or others want it to be. So people sometimes who grow up in these codependent, dysfunctional environments or homes, will quite often try to be somebody for somebody else. They won't be themselves because they don't really probably sometimes know who they are. You know what I mean? Especially if you're just so abused, you quite often don't know who you are. Yourself, I do really was quite a bit older. Like even I would say after the age of 25, I still had a lot of issues, and in my 30s, I was really trying to find myself. And so it did take a long time. And they said it may develop a negative attitude towards self or others, and it is capable of unconditional love, rewarding others only if they conform to its inner values of what is right and wrong. So I wonder, sometimes I wonder if I actually do stuff like that. You know what I mean? Growing up with these behaviors, these dysfunctional belief systems, that most normal people don't have a problem with. You just kind of wonder sometimes if you're doing stuff like that, and would you recognize it? I've actually had counselors, life coaches, and whatnot point out stuff to me that I was doing that I didn't realize I was doing, which was self-sabotaging. And I'm not cutting or anything like that. I was just self-sabotaging all the time, quitting jobs, walking away from things. It's like, well, I'll walk away before I get thrown out. I'll quit before I get hurt. These types of things, right? And I didn't realize I was even doing it. And I had someone point it out to me, and they said, well, you can walk away if you want to, or you can stay, and you can you can stick around and you can learn how to deal with things. So I was kind of interesting to have somebody point this stuff out to me. Codependency is generated in emotionally disturbed family systems by inconsistent, unpredictable, and crazy parenting styles. In physically and sexually abusive family systems, codependency is related to the violation of personal boundaries. Victims of abuse fear that the violation may reoccur at any time, and they experience an invasion of their self-respect. They cannot control their own bodies, and their choices and desires are not respected. This is so serious, this issue. I grew up in a hugely sexually abusive environment, and what it did to the whole family was just horrible. And, like this, I totally relate to this stuff because I totally know what it did. You know what I mean? I talk a lot about this on my shows, especially in the morning. And, my dad was very abusive towards my mother and was raping her, marital rape, right? And actually raped her in front of me one time because he had no boundaries. You know what I mean? He just did what he wanted to do when he wanted to do that. You know what I mean? He was a very sick man. And so my mom had no right to her own body. And I witnessed this, right? So I didn't trust anybody. I was being abused physically and sexually as well, and in every other way. And so it became very aware to me that I did not have control over my body. And later growing up, you get to be a young adult or an adult, and it's like, it's hard to deal with that because it's like, I don't want anybody touching me. This is my body, right? You start to, seeing all this and witnessing and being part of this stuff pushed me to be somebody who didn't want anybody to touch me because it was my body. And I had witnessed my mom being abused, and I was being abused by both my parents. It was absolutely ridiculous. And this is what this stuff does. You know what I mean? It's horrific. And so victims of abuse may fear that the violation may reoccur at any time. And experience an invasion of their self-respect. They cannot control their own bodies, and it's horrific. It's absolutely horrifying. There's people in my family, siblings, that think that what my dad did was fine to my mom. I've actually called them on it and said, look, Dad raped Mom. You know what I mean? And you guys know this because they were always trying to save my mom from my dad because my dad was always trying to force himself on her. And in the middle of the night, and people, the older siblings would get my dad away from her. Of course, there'd be a big fight. My dad would beat up the kids and really just absolutely crazy. And, this is the kind of stuff that, my siblings don't think there was anything wrong with that. They don't think marital rape was an issue. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But that's the difference between people. Some people think it's okay to rape children. Some people think it's okay to rape whoever they want. Some people think it's okay to burn and kill and beat on their children. But it's not okay. And it doesn't matter whether they think it's okay because there's something wrong with them. That's why they think it's okay. It's not okay. And that's why I do these shows, because the more voices we have out here speaking out against this stuff, the better. We really need people to stand up and say, no, it's not okay. And the more people we have saying it, the better, because we need society to realize that this is a huge problem, and everyone has the right to their own body, and no one should be abusing anyone. And this is the issue. So thanks everybody for being here. We have about a minute left. We'll finish. We'll actually continue on with this article on Friday night and see how far we can get through it. I hope you will check it out. www.mudrashram.com. And Have a great night, everybody. Take good care. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, one child abuse survivor to another. And then tomorrow night again, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here on Blog Talk Radio. Next Monday, we have Dita Dixon coming on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. She's going to be the 28th of February. We'll be discussing domestic violence and the effects it has on people as well as the children. And then March 2nd, I hope he can be there, Wednesday, Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Keith Smith, author, survivor of a child sexual predator assault. He was raped and beaten, and he survived. He lived. And he's very much a public advocate. He's been on Oprah, and he's done a lot of public speaking. He's written a book, The Men in My Town. And this book I'd love to get a hold of a copy of it. I have not read it. And when I get some extra money, I'm going to buy a copy. And he's coming on the show for an interview, and I hope that you will tune in because he's got some tips for parents on how to protect your children, and that we need to protect our children so that they do not end up victims of a child sexual predator, just like he was. And so, I'm so happy to have him come on the show on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here. So that's www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. Or if you just type into the search button on Blog Talk Radio up in the search bar on the actual Blog Talk Radio site, Dreamcatchers, it will take you to the shows. You can find the actual show, and that's March 2nd, coming up next Wednesday. So thanks, everybody, for being here. Have a great night. Whatever you do, take good care of yourselves, man. You sure deserve it. And, if you're in a situation and you can't cope, you call a crisis line. Do whatever you have to get help. And if you're being abused, you make sure you get some help. You know what I mean? You call those help phone lines. You call somebody. But you get yourself some help, right? We certainly don't deserve this. So have a great night, everybody. Take good care of yourselves. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.